Surah Baqarah Ayah number 21 to 22. A review of verses linked together. The second verse of the Surah Al-Baqarah provides the answer to the prayer made in the Surah Al-Fatiha, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, guide us in the straight path. That is to say, the guidance man has prayed for is present in this book, for the Holy Quran is from the beginning to the end a detailed account of the straight path. Then the surah proceeds to divide men into three groups according to whether they accept the guidance of the Holy Quran or not. 3 verses speak of the true and God-fearing Muslims who not only accept but also act upon the guidance, and the next 2 verses of those disbelievers who oppose it openly. Then come 13 verses dealing with the hypocrites who are hostile to this guidance, but for the sake of petty worldly interests, or in turn seeking to harm the Muslims, try to keep their disbelief concealed and to present themselves as Muslims. Thus, the first 20 verses of the surah, in dividing men into 3 groups on the basis of their acceptance or rejection of the guidance, indicate that the proper criterion for dividing men into groups is neither race nor color, nor language nor geography, but religion. Hence, those who believe in Allah and follow the guidance He has provided in the Holy Quran form one nation, and those who disbelieve form a different nation. The Holy Quran calls the former the party of Allah and the latter the party of Shaitan. Then the present verses 21 and 22, addressing the 3 groups together, present the message for which the Holy Quran has been revealed. In asking men to give up the worship of created beings and to worship Allah alone, they adopt a mode of expression which not only makes an affirmation, but also supports it with arguments so clear that even an average man, only if he uses his common sense, cannot help be convinced of the oneness of God. Commentary. In starting the address, verse 21 uses the Arabic word an-nas, which signifies man in general, or man as such. So the word covers all the 3 groups we have just mentioned. And the message delivered by the verse is A'budu Rabbakum, worship your Lord. The Arabic word ibadah, worship, connotes expending all energies one has in total obedience to somebody, and shunning all disobedience out of one's awe and reverence. We have earlier explained the meaning of the word Rabb, one who gives nurture. Let us add that the choice of this particular name from among the beautiful names of Allah is very meaningful in the present context, for the affirmation has thus been combined with the argument in a very short sentence. The word Rabb indicates that only He is or can be worthy of being worshipped. He is the final and absolute cause of nurturing man, who changes man through gradual stages of development from a drop of water into a healthy, sentient and rational being, and who provides the means for his sustenance and growth. The truth is so obvious that even an ignorant or intellectually dull man would, on a little reflection, not fail to see and admit that such a power of nurturing can only belong to Allah and not to a created being. For what can a creature do for man when it owes its very existence to the Creator? Can a needy one come to the help of another? And if it appears to be doing so, the act of nurturing must in reality and ultimately belong to the one being on whom they both have to depend in order to exist at all. So who else but the Rabb can be worthy of adoration and worship? The sentence is addressed to all 3 groups of men, and for each it has different meaning. Worship your Lord. The phrase calls upon the disbeliever to give up worshipping created beings and to turn to the Creator. It asks the hypocrites to be sincere and true in their faith. It commands the sinning Muslims to change their ways and try to be perfect in their obedience to Allah. And it encourages the God-fearing Muslims to be steadfast in their worship and obedience and to make a greater effort in the way of Allah. The 2 verses proceed to enlarge upon the theme by specifying certain special qualities of the Rabb, who created you and those before you. This is a quality which one cannot even imagine to belong to a created being, for it can pertain only to the Creator. That is, the quality of giving existence to what did not exist before, and of producing from the darkness and filth of the mother's womb a creature as lovely and noble as man. In adding to the phrase Allazi khalaqakum, who created you, the words وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ, and those before you. The verse shows that Allah alone is the creator of all mankind. It is also significant that the verse mentions only those before you and not those who will come after you. And though this omission suggests there will not be any ummah, a traditional community formed by all the followers of a prophet, to succeed the ummah of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, for no prophet will be sent down after the last prophet ﷺ, and hence no new ummah will arise. The final phrase of verse 21, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, has been translated here as so that you may become God-fearing. It may also be translated to mean so that you may save yourselves from hell, or so that you may guard yourselves against evil. But the point is that one can hope to attain salvation and paradise only when one worships Allah alone and does not associate anyone else with Him. Before we proceed, we must clarify a very important doctrinal point. The phrase لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, which has been translated here as so that you may become God-fearing, employs the Arabic particle لَعَلَّ, which indicates an expectation or hope, and is used on an occasion when it is not definite that a certain action or event would necessarily be actualized. Now, if one really does possess Iman and does really believe in Tawheed, one would in consequence definitely attain salvation and go to heaven, as Allah Himself has promised. But here the certainty has been expressed in terms of an expectation or hope in order to make man realize that no human action by itself and in itself can bring salvation as a necessary reward. One can attain salvation and go to heaven only by the grace of Allah alone. The ability to perform good deeds and Iman itself is only a sign of divine grace, not the cause. The next verse recounts some other qualities of Allah with regard to the act of nurturing, with the difference that while verse 21 spoke of the bounties of Allah pertaining to the human self, verse 22 speaks of those pertaining to man's physical environment. Since man's being basically has two dimensions, one internal, anfus, and the other external, afaq, the two verses in a summary way encompass all the kinds of blessing that descend on man from Allah. Among the cosmic bounties, the first to be mentioned is the earth, which has been made a bed for man. It is neither soft and fluid like water on which one cannot settle, nor hard like stone or steel that should make it difficult to be harnessed for man's purposes, but has been given a middle state between the soft and the hard for man to utilize it conveniently in his daily life. The Arabic word firash, bed, which literally means something spread out, does not necessarily imply that the earth is not round, for the great globe of the earth, in spite of being round, appears to be flat to the onlooker, and the usual way of the Holy Quran is to describe things in an aspect which should be familiar to an average man, literate or illiterate, city dweller or rustic. The other bounty is that the sky has been made like an ornamented and beautiful ceiling. The third is that Allah sent down water from the sky. This again does not necessarily mean that water comes down directly from the sky without the medium of clouds. Even in everyday idiom, a thing coming down from above is said to be coming from the sky. The Holy Quran itself on several occasions refers to Allah sending down water from the clouds. Did you send it down from the clouds, or did we send it? Surah number 56, verse number 69. And we have sent down from the rain clouds abundant water. Surah number 78, ayah number 14. The fourth bounty is to bring forth fruits with this water, and to provide nourishment to man from them. The first three of these bounties are of an order in which man's effort or action, his very being even, does not enter at all. There was no sign of man when the earth and the sky already existed, and the clouds and rain too were performing their functions. As for these things, not even an ignorant fool could ever fancy that all of this could be the work of a man or an idol or of a created being. In the case of producing fruits and making them serve as nourishment for man, however, a simpleton may, on a superficial view, attribute this to human effort and ingenuity. For one can see man digging the earth, sowing the seed, and protecting the plants. But the Holy Quran has, in certain verses, made it quite clear that human effort has nothing to do with the act of growing trees and bringing out fruits. For human activity accomplishes nothing more than removing the hindrances of birth and growth of a plant, or protecting it from being destroyed. Even the water which feeds the plant is not the creation of the farmer. All he does is to make the water reach the plant at the proper time in a proper quantity. The actual birth and growth of the tree, and the putting forth of leaves, branches, and fruits, is the work of divine power, and of no one else. Says the Holy Quran, "Have you considered the soil you till? Is it you that give them growth, or we?" Surah number 56, Ayah number 63. The only answer which man can find to this question posed by the Holy Quran is that undoubtedly it is Allah alone who makes the plants grow. In short, this verse mentions 4 qualities of Allah which cannot possibly be found in a created being. Having learnt from those 2 verses that it is Allah and no one else who brings man into existence out of nothingness, and provides the means of his sustenance through the earth, the sky, the rains, and the fruit, one cannot, if one possesses a little common sense, help acknowledging that Allah and no one else is worthy of all worship and obedience, and that the ultimate iniquity is to turn away from Him who made man exist and gave him the means of survival and growth, and to prostrate oneself before others who are as helpless as man. Allah has put man at the head of all his creatures so that the universe should serve him, while he should totally devote himself to the worship and remembrance of Allah and obedience to Him without distraction. But there are men so given to their indolence and ignorance that they forget the one God, and in consequence have to serve 1 billion gods. In order to rescue men from the slavery of others, the Holy Quran says at the end of this verse, "So do not set up parallels to Allah when you know." That is to say, once one has understood that in reality Allah alone is the creator and the provider, one will also understand that no one else can be worthy of worship and of being associated with Allah as an equal or rival God. To sum up, these 2 verses call men to what is essential purpose of sending down all the divine books and all the prophets, Tawheed, or the affirmation and the worship of the one God. Tawheed is a doctrine which has an all-pervading and radically transforming impact on every sphere of human life, internal as well as external, individual as well as collective. For once a man comes to believe that there is only one being who alone is the creator, the Lord and Master of the universe, who alone is all-powerful and ordains the slightest movement of the smallest atom, and without whose will no one can harm or do good to another. Such a man, rich or poor, in joy or sorrow, would always look only towards that one being, and gain the insight to discover behind the veil of apparent causes the workings of the same omnipotence. If our modern worshippers of energy only had some understanding of the doctrine of Tawheed, they would easily see that the power resides neither in steam nor in electricity, but that the source of all powers is the one being who has created steam and electricity. To know this, however, one must have insight. The greatest philosopher in the world, if he fails to see this truth, is no better than the rustic fool who saw a railway train move at the waving of a green flag and stopping of a red flag, and concluded that it was the power of the green and red flags that controlled the movement of the huge train, made an obeisance to them. People would laugh at the rustic, for he did not know that the 2 flags were merely signs, while the train is actually run by the driver, or better still, by the engine. A more perceptive observer would ascribe the function of the steam inside the engine, but he who believes in the one God would laugh at all these wise men. For he who can see through the steam, the fire, and the water even, and behind the appearances of the might of the one and only being who has created fire and water, and whose will makes them perform their allotted functions. The doctrine of Tawheed, a source of peace in human life. Tawheed, the most fundamental doctrine of Islam, is not a mere theory, but the only effective way of making man a man in the real sense of the term. It is his first and last refuge, and the panacea for all his ills. For the essence of this doctrine is that every possible change in the physical universe, its very birth and death, is subject to the will of the one and only being. and a manifestation of his wisdom. When this doctrine takes hold of a man's mind and heart and becomes his permanent state, all dissension ceases to exist, and the world itself changes into a paradise for him. For he knows that the enmity of the foe and the love of the friend equally proceed from Allah, who rules over the hearts of both. Such a man lives his life in perfect peace, fearing none and expecting nothing from anyone. Shower him with gold or put him in irons, he would remain unmoved, for he knows where it comes from. This is the significance of the basic declaration of the Islamic creed, or La ilaha illallah, there is no God but Allah. But obviously it is not enough to affirm the oneness of God orally. One must have a complete certitude, and must also have the truth always present close to one's heart. For Tawheed is to see God as one, and not merely to say that He is one. Today, the number of those who can respect this basic formula of the Islamic creed runs to millions all over the world, far more than it ever did, but mostly it is just an expense of breath. Their lives do not show the colour of Tawheed, or otherwise they would have been like their forefathers, who were daunted neither by wealth nor by power, awed neither by numbers nor by pomp, and showed to turn their back upon the truth. When a prophet could all by himself stand up against the world and say, "So try your guile on me, then give me no respite." Surah number 17, Ayah number 195. If the blessed companions and their successors came to dominate the world in a few years, the secret lay in this Tawheed, correctly understood and practiced. May Allah bless all the Muslims with this great gift. Ameen.